Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at Lapostolle's Apalta. So we're in Chile. This is the 2020 vintage of this. And Apalta is actually the name of a DO, which is where the wine is from. Lapostolle, long-established company tracing its origins back to 1827, owned by the French-Chilean Lapostolle family. On some occasions they're referred to as the Marnier Lapostolle family. Certainly they owned the Grand Marnier brand up until 2016. In 1994, Alexandra Marnier Lapostolle decided to found a winery in Apalta. The family are now known as the Bornet Lapostolle family, and today Charles Bornet, the 7th generation of his family to do so, now runs the company. The estate comprises 3 areas of vineyards, totaling about 370 hectares of vines in all. The majority of those are in Apalta, which is a sub-region of Colchagua, and there they've got about 197 hectares. They have a further 57 hectares in Casablanca and 116 hectares in the Colchagua Valley. Their principal winery at Cunaco has a production volume of about 3.3 million litres of wine a year. They do also have a smaller winery in Colchagua, which is where they make Clos Apalta, which is their top wine. Now this is wine made from plots of their oldest vines, planted in the 1920s, giving lower yields, more concentrated fruit. And the Clos Apalta, and they also make a second wine of that, made in the winery in Colchagua. I don't know if this wine is made there as well. But this wine, the Apalta, sits between those super premium wines and the more commercial end of the Lapostolle range. So they have a varietal range, the Casa Lapostolle wines, and then sitting above that, but below the Apalta, are the Cuvée Alexandra wines, named in honour of their founder. To talk about Apalta, it's probably worth just mentioning the other well-known and well-distributed producer from the region, Montes. Now Apalta sits about 170 miles southwest of Santiago, near Santa Cruz. It's a sheltered horseshoe-shaped valley, protected from the cold Pacific Ocean and the Humboldt currents that bring cold water up from Antarctica by a range of coastal hills. These hills also shade the valley from rain, and therefore the climate is a relatively dry Mediterranean climate. The Tinguiririca River runs through the valley. That's a tributary of the Rapel Valley, and it's a river bringing meltwater down from the Andes, so there's plentiful irrigation water available if necessary. The valley also has a good diurnal temperature variation, meaning that you have cool nights that can help the fruit to retain acidity, enabling the vines to produce fruit with good ripeness, yet retaining good freshness. The 2020 growing season saw drought during the winter, which led to the need to irrigate to top up the ground's reserves of water. Spring was mild and dry, and the phenological cycle ended up about 10 days ahead of average. There were summer heat waves, and picking also took place about 10 days in advance of the normal dates. The fruit was hand-picked, and all the plots were picked and vinified separately. There was very careful selection went on at the winery to prevent too much overripe fruit getting into the vats. Maceration lasted for 28 days, so was probably longer than fermentation, and took place in stainless steel tanks at temperatures between 26 and 28 degrees C. Now, because of the high ripeness of the fruit, there was quite gentle extraction. They didn't do too much in the way of pumping over to prevent over-extraction from the high ripeness fruit. The vintage still resulted in quite dense wines with plentiful structure. 60% of the wine aged for 14 months in second fill French oak, and the balance, the remaining 40%, stayed in tank for that period. The wine was then blended. The blend was 68% Cabernet Sauvignon with 15% of Syrah, 8% each of Carmenère and Merlot, then a single percent of Grenache to complete the blend. So a sort of Bordeaux-esque blend, but with a little bit of Rhone influence in there from the Syrah and the Grenache. The wine was bottled in September of 2021. So let's see what we make of it, shall we? The colour has an impressive depth. I think I can just about make out the stem of the glass looking through the wine, but it's pretty close to being opaque. There's a vibrant black ruby with purple notes at the rim, more a red purple than a blue purple, but still looking quite youthful in terms of that colour. Now the wine has, according to its label, 14.5% alcohol, so not surprisingly it's forming tears quite readily on the sides of the glass there as I swirl it. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? The aromas have a lovely intensity and a beautiful freshness. There are two complementary notes in there. One is an underlying rich, more ripe red fruit. It's sort of mulberries, it's less ripe loganberries, that sort of style of things. And then there are some higher notes, some cassis notes, sort of slightly leafy, blackcurranty aromas. But you see those after the sort of the ripe fruit that's more obvious on the initial nosing. So let's taste. Initially, the wine seems as if it's going to be big and rich, and then its acidity with those sort of blackcurranty notes cut in and give a freshness and an energy to the wine. And then you're getting slightly cedary, certainly grainy notes as the structure hits the front of your tongue. But laid over that very quickly, there's some rich, generous, licoricey notes. There are hints of graphite. There are notes of blueberry. There are hints of raisin fruit. But certainly there's a sort of there's a dense black fruit core following on from an initial lively red fruit, and bound up in there you're aware of the oak, more sort of texturally in its sort of graininess, but there are underlying hints of cedar and spices such as cinnamon, nutmeg, that sort of thing. Although initially it seemed quite big, wine's acidity and its freshness makes it seem more sort of medium to full-bodied than actually full-bodied and completely foursquare. Although having said that, the alcohol is giving quite a richness and a roundness and a weight to the end of the finish. But again, the freshness is stopping the alcohol from overpowering the fruit, so you're still getting some delicate red fruit perfume and some of the lively mouth-watering nature that the acidity gives to the finish, giving the flavours quite nice length as well. Now the wine is rich, it's quite structured. I wouldn't claim it was an elegant wine, but I would certainly say that for such a ripe wine, it's got some nice balance. Yes, there's some grip on the front palate, but it's not astringent. It's very approachable now. Its density and its ripeness. This is probably a wine that you could keep for somewhere up to 10 years, probably 8 years or so. Although there isn't really a need to soften it. Yes, it has a little bit of structure on the front palate, but I think if you were to pair this with a sort of a juicy steak or something like that, that would actually be a structure that you'd actually need to complement the dish. So I think the wine is pretty approachable now. I think it's a wine that certainly delivers plenty of flavour, it has good structure, it has nice length. I don't think it's a wine that will disappoint on hedonistic terms, and yet it does retain a good degree of balance. Now looking at our Wine Searcher aggregated score for this wine, it scored 88 out of 100. I think if I had to score it, I might be 1, maybe 2 points more generous than that, but I think it's a little difficult to give a much higher score than that to a wine that has quite as much alcohol and quite as much rich ripeness as that. Given these factors, I actually think in context it's quite a well-balanced wine. And I certainly think that its concentration and fruit make it a good value wine. So thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you found it interesting, do please press the like button. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, it'd be fantastic if you could think about subscribing to our channel. We'd very much appreciate your support there. So that would allow you to set a notification, and that way you could be alerted every time we release a new video. If you have any comments you'd like to leave, please pop those in the box below. It would be fantastic to hear your feedback on the tastings we're doing, the wines we're looking at, or anything else related to that. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please feel free to share it with them. I will leave a link in the notes below to the find page on the Wine Searcher website for this wine, so you can follow that and you can find out where the wine's available, what its pricing is in your market. You can also find out background information such as looking at the Apalta region. We'll make some food pairing suggestions. You can see the price history, you can see what the critics have to say, you can see how well vintages of this wine have done in wine competitions. There's plenty of information there, so do please follow that link, and I hope you find it useful. But thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope you'll manage to make some time. Come and join us again in the near future for another tasting. Thanks again. Bye for now.